Hello, I'm Alistair Upton, the Chief Executive of Creative Folkestone, and I'm here in Dungeness, Prospect Cottage, Derek Jarman's house from 1986 to his death in 1994. Here he kept a diary, and 1989 and 1990 was published as Modern Nature. And it is here also that he received the diagnosis of HIV, which at the time was a virtual death sentence. But Dungeness, the landscape, the cottage, and above all the garden provided him with not just solace, but actually a deep joy and affirmation of life. And this was a labour of love. Buried deep beneath the shingle is the compost that allows the plants to grow and give us this effortless beauty that we can experience today. And looking out, there are no fences, and Jarman said, "My boundaries are the horizon." And that captures him as an artist, working across areas as a painter, filmmaker, writer, activist, and gardener. We've been asked not just to preserve Prospect Cottage in aspect, but to bring back the vibrant creativity that was so abundant here. And that's what we're doing today with this curated concert. Part of the Creative Folkestone Book Festival series, Strange Concord, we bring together art from a particular time that has never been seen together before, so that we can gain new insights into it. The Gorecki title is taken from the description of the dying Hamlet. Now cracks a noble heart. Good night, sweet prince. And flights of angels will sing thee to thy rest.
Flowers spring up and entwine themselves like bindweed along the footpaths of my childhood. Most loved were the blue stars of wild forget-me-nots that shimmered in the dark Edwardian shrubberies of my grandmother's garden. Pristine snowdrops spread out in the welcoming sun. A single crocus, purple among its golden companions. Wild columbine with its flowers shaped like vertebrae, and the ominous fritillaria that crouched snake-like in corners. These spring flowers are my first memory, startling discoveries. They shimmered briefly before dying, dividing the enchantment into days and months, like the gong that summoned us to lunch, breaking up my solitude. The gong brought the pressing necessity of that other world into the garden where I was alone. In that precious time, I would stand and watch the garden grow, something imperceptible to my friends. There in my dreaming, petals would open and close. A rose suddenly fall apart, scattering itself across the path. Or a tulip lose a single petal, its perfection shattered forever. For 2 months after moving here, I spent hours each day picking up fragments of countless smashed bottles, china plates, pieces of rusty metal. There was a bike, cooking pots, even an old bedstead. Rubbish had been scattered over the whole landscape. Each day I thought I'd got to the end of the task, only to find the shingle had thrown up another crop overnight. I was describing the garden to Maggie Hambling at a gallery opening and said I intended to write a book about it. She said, "Oh, you finally discovered nature, Derek." "I don't think it's really quite like that," I said, thinking of Constable and Samuel Palmer's Kent. "Ah, I understand completely. You've discovered modern nature." I live in borrowed time. Therefore I see no reason in the world why my heart grows not dark. A cold wind blows tonight over this desolate island, over the hills and dales, over mountain and marsh, down the great roads and little lanes, through the villages and small towns, through the great towns and the cities. Everywhere it blows through empty streets and desolate houses, rattling the hedgerows and broken windows, drumming on locked doors. This wind is blowing high in the tower blocks and steeples, down along the river, invading houses and mansions, through the corridors and up the staircases, rustling the faded curtains in bedrooms, over the carpets, up the aisles and down in the crypts, in public places and private, among forgotten secrets, around the armchair, the easy chair, across the kitchen table. So icy is this wind that it rattles the bones in the graves and sends rats shivering down the sewers. And then the wind is gone, chasing itself across the shingle to lose itself in the waves which brush past the nests, throwing up plumes of salt spray which spatter across the windows. Nothing can hide from it. Certainly no man can be wise before he has lived his share of winters in the world. A hallucinatory dusk, washed with colours to drive Monet to suicide. At sunset, the brightest sickle moon appeared in a gentle blue sky. Minute by minute gathering in intensity, it stayed until just before midnight. Night clear as a bell. The blue passed through violet with strands of rose and old gold to become a deep indigo. So etched were the moon and stars, they seemed to have been cut out by a child to decorate a crib. The night sky here is a riot that outshines the brightest lights of Piccadilly. The stars have the intensity of jewels. So flat is the Ness that those stars that lie at the horizon touch your very feet, and the moon tips the waves with silver. The nuclear power station is a great ocean liner moored in the firmament, ablaze with light, white, yellow, ruby, whilst round the bay the lights stretch from Folkestone to Dover. High above, jetliners from the south flash silent in the stars. On these awesome nights, reduced to silence, I walk across the Ness. Never in my many sleepless nights have I witnessed a spectacle like this. Not the antique bells of the flocks moving up a Sardinian hillside, the barking of the dogs and the sharp cries of the shepherd boys, nor moonlit nights sailing the Aegean, nor the scented nights and fireflies of Fire Island, smashed glass star-strewn through the piers along the Hudson. Nothing, can quite equal this. The orchestra has struck up the music of the spheres. The spectral dancers on the fated liner whirl you off your feet till you feel the great globe move. Light-hearted laughter. Here, man has invaded the heavens, but the moon, not to be usurped, shines sickle bright, gathering in our souls. HB says I'm only content when under pressure or have something I can worry about. But what do I worry about? The garden, mostly. The hurting winds and scalding sun. I worry about my stomach, as the crypto whatever that's got hold of it leaves me with nausea. I worry about fire. I go round and round the house checking for cigarette butts and sparking switches. Then there is the problem of work. When a telegram arrived on Wednesday from the Opera House in Lyon asking me to direct the Strauss Wild Salome, I panicked. Anything that removes me from Dungeness unsettles me. Worked in the garden all day. It was close, hot as an oven, the sun a dull red ball shrouded in heat haze. I repotted the geranium cuttings taken last month and planted out the larger plants from last autumn. These old-fashioned geraniums, Paul Crampnell, are the only ones I'll have. All the modern ones seem muddy, bodged by some amateur colourist. All the seeds I planted are now up. Dill, fennel, horehound, pennyroyal and chives. The flowers as well. Nasturtium, night-scented stock, marigold, aquilegia, borage. The foxgloves are coming out, both the wild and cultivated ones. The irises are still blooming. The pale blue plant, which has never produced flowers, is particularly beautiful. I lifted and divided the plants which have flowered. The roses have taken. I've lost only 3. The canary bird and burnet from last year are covered with blossom. The soapwort has many tiny, dusty pink flowers. As the sun set, I watered the garden. Location is the key to respectability. It's like cocaine in the boardroom and the needle of the streets. But for those who know, the alfresco fuck is the original fuck. Didn't the Garden of Eden come before the house which hid our nakedness? Sex on the heath is an idyll pre-fall. Did Adam masturbate until God hacked out his rib to create Eve? All the Cains and Abels you could wish for are out on a hot night. The may blossom scents the night air, and the bushes glimmer like a phosphorescent counterpane in the indigo sky. Under the great beeches, some boys with gypsy faces have lit a fire, which they stoke, sending sparks flying, smiling faces flushed with the heat. In the dark, for a brief moment, age, class, wealth, all the barriers are down. An illusion, you say. I know, but what a sweet one. Many of the men here lead straight daylight lives. There's a soldier from Aldershot in sneakers, training trousers and t-shirt. Motorcyclist studs, sparkling in the firelight, lounging against a tree. Others sit at a distance. Someone has a ghetto blaster. There's music.
Rondo.
A letter from the Folkestone Herald alerted me. The Sun wanted to buy their photos of me. Meanwhile, the lawyers' letters to the People and the Mirror have produced an apology and a correct reporting of my HIV status under the headline, Dell's Not Dying. A motorbike draws up and a hapless reporter from the Sun clambers off. This is his third trip down here from London. Do you mind if I photo you? Yes, but since one way or another you're going to, you might as well do a good job of it. Not in front of the house, on the beach. We trek off across the shingle. I sense he wants to get this assignment over with as quickly as possible. I offer to carry his camera bag with a malicious smile. When we set up at the water's edge, he says, "I'm only a snapper." Well, I say, this is your chance to take a decent photo. I fix him with a basilisk stare, and he clicks away. "You look uncomfortable," he remarks. "Not as much as you should." "Oh? I'm writing a diary, which I'm publishing. You're today's entry. When all is said and done, what I choose to write will, I expect, be the only trace of your life. Your memory is in my hands." Long silence. The Sun's not kept by the British Museum. The paper destroys itself, it's so acid. When you get back, tell your editor to read the retraction in the People, because next time I'm going for 1 million unless it's right. Mr. Maxwell, the retired captain of the AIDS Foundation, has seen better to print an apology. I kept him snapping for as long as I could. I hope he remembers the session.
Romance.
Filmed the Pet Shop Boys concert at Wembley. It had rave reviews in all the music papers and listings. Only the qualities have poured cold water. Whatever the shortcomings, it's entertaining. Spectacular dancing, colourful costumes. And the film backdrop, Super 8 blown up to 70mm, works. In It's a Sin, the show crescendos and the whole thing fuses together. Shopping has choreography as stylish as Gene Kelly. King's Cross, with HB's beautiful black and white film, is heartfelt. Sin and Paninaro, which I don't like, are the audience's favourites.
Blossoms.
When the doctor first told me I was HIV positive, I think she was more upset than me. It didn't sink in at first. That took weeks. I thought, this is not true. Then I realised the enormity. I'd been pushed into yet another corner, this time for keeps. It quickly became a way of life. When the sun shone, it became unbearable. I didn't say anything. I had decided to be stoic. This was a chance to be grown up. Though I thought I ought to be crying. I walked down Charing Cross Road in the sunlight. Everyone was so blissfully unaware. The sun is still shining. The perception that knowing you're dying makes you feel more alive is an error. I'm less alive. There's less life to lead. I can't give 100% attention to anything. Part of me is thinking about my health.
Fantasy.
Read Julian of Norwich's Revelation of Love to the gentle whir of the washing machine, which H.P. says puts his mind at rest. Christmas cards fall in an avalanche through the door, along with unsolicited mail, advertising. Hobgoblins, fays and snowbound fairies. A rude calendar would be more welcome. I have to muster my strength to open them. Julian says it is today Doomsday with me, O dear worthy moder. I sing myself to the bookshops, mindful of the Middle Ages, Bruegel's hunter returning home late in a snowbound afternoon, black crows tumbling across a darkening sky. Everything I perceive makes a song. Everything I see saddens the eye. Behind these everyday jottings, the sweetness of a boy's smile. Into my mind comes the picture of a blood-red camellia displaced in the February twilight. Great dropis of blood in the shewing countless raindrops fall so thick no man may number them with bodily wit. For years, the Middle Ages have formed the paradise of my imagination. The archaic half-smile on the apostle's lips at Chartres, the bliss that unlocks. It is not William Morris's journeyman Eden, but something subterranean, like the seaweed and coral that floats in the arcades of a jewelled reliquary. In his bookshop, Ian Shipley said his father knew Jeremy Thorpe was riding for a fall because of his florid waistcoats. "And you," he said, "are wearing brown shoes." I've always worn brown shoes, since my father warned me off them in the 50s. Spivs, lounge lizards, interesting uncles wore brown shoes. As soon as I was able, I bought my first pair in Carnaby Street. Some brown Italian hunting boots with pockets for powder and shot. I polish my dozen pairs of second-hand shoes. HB calls them dead men's shoes. This year I've lost so many friends. None missed more than Howard. Without him, I have no one to confide in. No one can replace his sound encouragement. His death in April overshadowed the summer. Paul died without fuss one October morning. New Year's Eve. A dull thud brought me into the kitchen this morning. Looking out the window, a kestrel underneath the dog rose only 4 feet away. At first I thought it had stunned itself flying into the window, but after a minute it took off, and I noticed it had a sparrow in its talons. The nuclear power station roared out the old year in a cloud of steam. They say there are plans to build a huge concrete dam around it. At 8, I walked over to Derek's. He conjured up a dish of spaghetti, then sat with an array of little bottles, like a child's chemistry set, mixing bark flower remedies. I left before midnight clutching 3 little bottles, and before turning in, swallowed a few drops against melancholy. I did not bang my head 3 times on the pillow to make a New Year's wish. Monday, January 1st, 1990. Derek Ball arrived for breakfast with his friends Todd and Tim before I was awake. He said the flower remedy was working. Pink pansies are good for you. Read from the Penguin Book of Homosexual Verse over the Earl Grey. Breakfast was interrupted by the kestrel pursuing sparrows around my bird table, which has become a sacrificial altar. I told Tim, who loves gossip, of my first meeting with Robert Mapplethorpe. I was set up with him one summer's afternoon on the King's Road by my friend Ula. He took me back to a studio where he was staying and showed me endless snapshots of boys chained Prometheus-like to rocks in the Pacific surf. We spent 3 days in bed. Robert was shamelessly ambitious. Years later, when he had become the famous photographer, he passed me in a nightclub in the small hours and, barely pausing, said, "I've got everything I ever wanted, Derek. What have you got?" He didn't stay for an answer. That was the last I saw of him. The New Year's landscape is deadly cold, the silence broken by the mewing gulls. Rang Alistair and Christopher to wish them a Happy New Year. Christopher spent a stately Christmas at a country house in Northampton. Alistair fought with his boyfriend Barry into the small hours. Derek passes on his way back to London. I'm alone again. A day in which my eyes scarcely opened. The wind dropped. I was up at 11 and spent the morning bumping into the furniture to the sound of Frescobaldi. Then at 3, collapsed into bed for another 3 hours. I didn't shave. Stephen sung in the background. He has a very charming voice. It's 7:30. The sun shines so brightly you can't face west. The sea is aquamarine blue and the porcelain sky is tinged with pink. Conversation throughout the day has revolved around the greenhouse effect and HIV. Both Stephen and I know couples who had full sex till both were body positive. Who should have been responsible for whom? It's a terrible thing to have done, but the onus is always on those who have been brave enough to get tested. Are they always the guilty ones? I keep on seeing a glass falling in slow motion to smash into 1,000 pieces. It's so terribly slow. It takes days. Will it be a loop or a clip? Joris Ivans walking breathless into the desert to find the wind. Asthmatic. My childhood asthma takes me to the seaside, Bexhill, with Grandma Moselle, breathless in the hotel. Now I cannot move. If I do, I'm overwhelmed with coughing. My breath stops up, panic. Pneumonia plays its own pipes that wheeze and grumble. Simon Watney says it's an after tremor. What more do I need? Pneumonia and TB. Will I stand up to this? The shadowy black bats of breathlessness swarm through the evening, roost in my lungs. The oxygen whistles up my nose like water gurgling at the dentist's. There is nothing quite as frightening as losing your breath in an attack of coughing. Clasped by the velvet wings of the bats, I throw the sheets back. At the end of the film, Joris found the wind in the desert. Septrin drips into my arm. Blood taken from the arteries stings like a bee. Pneumocystis. Till they learnt you died from this. I would mercifully pass from asphyxia to unconsciousness. It will take time to recover. TB below, pneumonia above. The line of pills has grown again. Chemical wedding. The slightest move threatens blackout. I lie facing the ceiling. I cannot turn left or right. Sleep as if I've been laid out. Thank God you don't attend your own funeral. I wonder if I'll end up with tacky white marble or a slab of black Purbeck, like the old tombs in Romney Church, with fine freehand lettering. Nurses rush by. They're short-staffed. The oxygen bubbles away. In the night, it roars like a river in full flood. The doctor worries that the sun will disappear before the weekend. I say not to worry. Before his time's up, he might wish he could switch it off. When someone dies here, a hush descends. I imagine the same atmosphere in a prison on the day someone's death sentence comes up. I hear a patient say, "Who's next for the cooler?" This afternoon was a nightmare. Two distraught young sisters of the dying boy, hysterical in the corridors. "Nurse, doctor, help, help!" The sound of running feet as the staff rush to the deathbed. Unable to move or help, I lay here, paralyzed. It would be such a small slip, and the toxos, furry little one-celled beasts, could push me into terminal spasms. "Nurse, doctor, he's having a fit." "David is dying," says Sister quietly as she passes. Helplessness. Even among the helpers, who I know are more upset than they appear, losing a patient. I do hope there's no hysteria on my deathbed. At least spare me that. Later the vicar came in and we chatted. Life's like that. Oh dear. And on with it. I feel I should be able to record more than I have, or more deeply, and find I cannot. Made my decision to take AZT in a low dose. DDI is on trial, mostly with people who have shown extreme reaction to AZT. The side effects I can expect are headaches, nausea, and muscle wasting. I write this quite nonchalantly in the X-ray department at St Mary's. But It has been a difficult decision, with help from many friends. Now I have another pill to swallow twice daily. 500 milligrams, the lower dosage, is what I have decided to take. The decision is completely my own. I don't have to take it if I don't want to, but all the advice points that way. X-rays take an age. I hate this waiting room. Old men and children stranded in wheelchairs, glum patience of everyone, silence broken by the warble of the phone. A sign says, "Come early, save time." An Arab woman in an apricot habit fringed with white lace. A gentleman with beard and turban. 2 bronzed elderly men who talk of canaries share my bench. My X-ray has disappeared into the machinery. I smile at a charming porter who wheeled me around the hospital in March. Another blue poster says SOS for the national health. My X-ray is clear, and my lung functions have improved. The Wharfside Clinic is an island. Albinoni on the tape player. Friendliness, everyone helpful. Conversation and smiling faces. I take my prescriptions to the pharmacy. AZT, Ritifa, pyroxidine, methamine, folinic acid, trilodin, sulfadiazine, carbamazepine. The night's dreams, aided and abetted by morphine derivatives, grew increasingly menacing. Demons lurked in the room. 10 days later, I pick up a pen, my appetite lost for recording and writing. It's 6 months since I became ill. I've lost 1.5 stone, and the razor bumps across my face again.
Thank you.